the dog is slamming its body against the side of the car over and over again, and the sound of it echoes across the parking lot like something out of a nightmare, and inside that vehicle, barely visible through the tinted glass, a toddler is slumped forward in a car seat with her tiny chest rising and falling slower than it should, and people walking by are staring at the dog like it's lost its mind, like it's feral, like someone needs to control it. But no one is stopping to ask why. No one is looking past the chaos to see the real emergency unfolding just inches away behind that locked door, and the heat index today has already crossed 108 degrees, and that car has been sitting in direct sunlight for almost 20 minutes now, and every second that ticks by is pushing this situation closer to a point where there's no coming back. So let me take you back to the beginning of this day, because what happened here didn't come out of nowhere. It built slowly, quietly, dangerously, the way the worst moments in life always do. It started like any other July morning in a suburb just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, the kind of morning where the sun is already punishing by 8 a.m. and the pavement is hot enough to burn bare feet, and a young mother named Jessica was trying to juggle more than any one person should have to. She had just come off a double shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She hadn't slept in almost 19 hours, and her daughter Emma, who was only 2 years old, had woken up cranky and fussy because the heat was already creeping into their small apartment even with the AC on full blast, and their dog, a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Duke, was pacing near the front door like he could feel something in the air, something off, something that Jessica in her exhaustion didn't have the bandwidth to notice. Duke had been part of their family since he was a puppy, and from the moment Emma was born, he had taken to her like she was his responsibility. He slept outside her nursery door every single night, he followed her from room to room during the day, and whenever she cried, he would whine softly until someone picked her up. So when Jessica strapped Emma into her car seat that morning to run a quick errand, Duke pushed his way into the back seat before anyone could stop him, and Jessica, too tired to argue, just sighed and let him stay. The plan was simple: drive to the pharmacy, pick up a prescription, and come straight home, 20 minutes tops. But the pharmacy line was longer than expected, and Jessica's phone buzzed with an urgent message from her supervisor asking her to call in about a shift change, and in the chaos of trying to respond while standing in line, she made a decision that would haunt her for years. She told herself she'd leave Emma in the car with the AC running, just for 5 minutes, just long enough to grab the medication and get back. But when she stepped out of the car and closed the door, something happened that she didn't realize until it was almost too late. The engine shut off automatically because of a feature she'd forgotten about, and the moment that engine stopped, the air conditioning stopped too, and Duke, still sitting in the back seat, immediately felt the shift. At first it was subtle, just a slight rise in temperature, just the stillness of the air becoming heavier, but Duke's senses picked up on it before a human ever would. He looked at Emma, who was still babbling softly in her car seat, and then he looked at the closed windows, and something inside him understood that this was wrong, that this heat was building too fast, that the little girl he had sworn to protect was in danger. He started panting, not because he was hot yet, but because his instincts were firing, and he began to shift in the back seat, pawing at the door, nudging the window with his nose, trying to find a way out, trying to get someone's attention. But Jessica was already inside the pharmacy, and the parking lot was quiet except for a few people walking to their cars, none of whom thought twice about a dog moving around in a backseat. The minutes stretched, and inside that car, the temperature was climbing at a terrifying rate. Within just 10 minutes it had gone from bearable to dangerous, and Emma's babbling had slowed, her little face was flushed, and her eyes were starting to droop in a way that wasn't sleep. It was something far more serious, and Duke knew it, he could feel it, and that's when his behavior shifted from anxious to desperate. He started barking, not his normal alert bark, but something raw and relentless, sharp bursts of sound that came one after another without pause, and he threw his body against the window, again and again, scratching at the glass, biting at the door handle, doing everything in his power to break free or to make someone, anyone, notice what was happening. A woman walking past the car stopped and stared, and her first instinct was to scold the dog. She muttered something about irresponsible owners leaving their pets in hot cars, and she pulled out her phone as if to report it, but she didn't look closely enough. She didn't see the toddler slumped in the front seat, she only saw the chaos Duke was creating, and after a moment, she walked away, shaking her head. Duke didn't stop. He couldn't stop, because stopping meant giving up on Emma, and that wasn't something he was capable of doing, so he kept barking, kept throwing himself at the door, kept scratching until his paws were raw, and the noise was so loud now that people across the parking lot were starting to turn their heads, not out of concern, but out of annoyance, and one man even shouted for someone to shut that dog up. Inside the car, Emma had gone completely still, her breathing was shallow, her skin was turning red, and the heat had become a living thing, pressing in from all sides, stealing the oxygen from the air, and Duke could see her, could smell the change in her, and he let out a sound that wasn't a bark anymore. It was a howl, long and desperate and filled with something that sounded almost human in its grief. That howl is what finally made someone stop, a teenager named Marcus who was walking back to his mom's car with a bag of groceries. He heard the sound and something about it made the hair on his arms stand up, and instead of looking away like everyone else had, he walked toward the noise, and as he got closer, he saw Duke's face pressed against the glass, saw the panic in the dog's eyes, and then, for the first time, he looked past the dog and saw the car seat, saw the tiny body slumped inside. And his stomach dropped. He ran to the driver's side door and pulled at the handle, but it was locked, and he slammed his palm against the window shouting for someone to help, and Duke, seeing that a human was finally responding, barked even louder, as if to say yes, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell you, and Marcus didn't wait for permission, he didn't wait for the owner. He picked up a chunk of loose concrete from the edge of the parking lot and he smashed it into the rear passenger window as hard as he could. The glass shattered inward, and Duke scrambled out first, not to escape, but to make room, and Marcus reached through the broken window, unlocked the front door, and pulled Emma out of her car seat, and the moment her limp little body was in his arms, he knew how serious this was. Her skin was burning, her lips were dry, and she wasn't responding when he called her name. A crowd had started to gather now, and someone had already dialed 911, and Marcus carried Emma to the shade and laid her down gently, pouring the cold water from his grocery bag over her arms and neck, trying to bring her temperature down while Duke stood over her, licking her face, whimpering softly, refusing to leave her side. And then Jessica came running out of the pharmacy, prescription bag still in hand, and the look on her face when she saw the shattered window, when she saw the crowd, when she saw her daughter lying on the ground with a stranger kneeling over her, that look is something no one who witnessed it will ever forget. It was the look of a mother realizing she had made a mistake that nearly cost her everything, and she collapsed beside Emma, sobbing, saying her name over and over, and Duke pressed himself against her side as if to say, I tried, I did everything I could. The paramedics arrived within minutes and they took over immediately, and by some miracle, Emma's core temperature hadn't crossed into the fatal range yet. She was severely overheated and dehydrated, but she was alive, and the EMT told Jessica that if they had arrived even 5 minutes later, the outcome would have been very different. They loaded Emma into the ambulance and Jessica climbed in beside her, and as the doors were closing, she looked back at Duke, who was sitting in the parking lot surrounded by strangers, his paws bleeding, his body trembling, his eyes still locked on that ambulance, and she whispered thank you in a voice so broken it barely made a sound. Later, after Emma had been treated and released, after Jessica had answered questions from police and child services, after the weight of what almost happened had started to settle in, she sat in her living room with Emma asleep on her chest and Duke lying at her feet, and she replayed every moment in her mind, every bark, every scratch, every frantic attempt Duke had made to get someone to pay attention. And she realized that her dog had understood the danger before she did, had fought to save her daughter when no one else even knew something was wrong, and that realization broke her open in a way she didn't know was possible. In the weeks that followed, Marcus came by the house to check on them, and Jessica thanked him with tears in her eyes, but Marcus told her the truth. He said he never would have stopped if it weren't for that howl. That sound Duke made was the only reason he looked twice, and when Jessica turned to look at Duke, the dog just rested his head on her lap like he always did, like he hadn't done anything extraordinary, like protecting Emma was simply what he was born to do. The community heard about what happened and donations poured in for Marcus and for Duke's vet bills, and local news ran the story with the headline that this video is based on, and people everywhere started talking about how easy it is to underestimate the ones who can't speak, how often we dismiss behavior we don't understand, how many times a warning goes unheard because it doesn't come in the form we expect. Jessica never left Emma in the car again, not for a second, not for any reason, and she never stopped looking at Duke the same way she looked at family, because that's exactly what he was, family who showed up when it mattered most, who refused to be ignored even when the world tried to silence him, who gave everything he had to save a little girl who didn't even know she was in danger. Emma is 5 now, and she doesn't remember that day in the parking lot, but she knows Duke is her best friend, she knows he sleeps outside her door every night, she knows he follows her everywhere she goes, and in her small, simple way, she understands that he loves her more than words could ever explain, and every time she hugs him, every time she buries her face in his fur and giggles, Duke's tail wags slowly, content, like this is exactly where he was always meant to be. This story stays with me because it reminds me that love doesn't wait for permission, it doesn't care about how it's perceived, and it doesn't give up just because no one else is paying attention, and I think about how many times we ignore instincts, how many times we silence the ones trying to warn us, how many moments slip past because we're too distracted to see what's right in front of us. If you made it to the end of this video, I want to ask you something honestly. If you saw a dog acting the way Duke did that day, barking, throwing himself against a car, would you stop and look closer, or would you assume someone else would handle it? And I'm not asking to make you feel guilty, I'm asking because I think most of us don't realize how often we have the chance to be the one who notices, the one who stops, the one who makes a difference. If this story moved you, I hope you'll share it with someone you love, a parent, a dog owner, a friend who needs a reminder that paying attention can save a life, and if it made you think about your own dog a little differently, maybe give them an extra hug tonight, because you never know when they're trying to tell you something that matters more than you realize.